everyone! Thanks for joining us for our online worship experience. If this is your first time joining us, click the Connect link on our homepage and let us know who you are. We'd love to say hi. Help us get the good news of Jesus out to everyone. Take a minute to like, share, and text all of your friends and family to join us at online.myvillage.church. If you are watching on Facebook, start a watch party and invite everyone you know. Take some pictures of you and your family watching the live stream and tag us. Even though we are not meeting in person as a church, we still stand together as a church family. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask. We even put a button on the homepage of our website so that you can fill out any urgent needs you have so that the church can support you and lift you up during these times. Pay close attention to all of our social media pages and emails for any schedule changes or updates. The church is not the building we meet in, it's you and I loving and serving one another and our community. Now, if you are used to giving in person and you want to support all that God is doing through the village and worship God with your giving, we have a few different ways for you to do that. You can text any amount to the number listed below or visit our website at myvillage.church and click on the Giving tab. Both of these are super secure and safe ways to give. With that being said, our worship team has worked hard to make you something special this week. We really missed playing together, so we didn't let COVID-19 stop us from worshiping. A huge thanks to the whole team, and let's get ready to worship together.
Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon and be gracious to you. Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon and be gracious to you. Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen, 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 amen. Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon and be gracious to you. Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. As we receive, we agree, amen. his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. Amen. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. Oh my God, no.
Oh, hey, it's my birthday today, so I'm taking a little break, and I just want to tell you guys I love you. I'll have a great online service today. We have a special guest speaker. His name is Pastor Darnell. Him and his wife Charity are from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they are on their way to be a part of the village here in just a few months. So we just can't wait for them to get here. But he's got a special word for you about Joseph today. I hope you guys have an awesome Sunday. I love you. See you next week.
Hey, today I'm going to be bringing you a story as a part of the series here at the Village, The Greatest Stories Ever Told. Today I'm going to be talking about the story of Joseph. You may have heard it as the story of Joseph and the coat of many colors. Now I'm going to dive right into it, and ultimately we begin with Joseph when he was only 17 years old. He was one of 12 brothers, and I'll tell you what, it wasn't an easy road. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his children because Joseph was born to him in his old age. So one day Jacob had a special gift made for him, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because his father loved him more than any of the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him even more than ever. "Listen to this dream," he said. "We were out in the field, tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine." His brothers responded, "So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon after this, again, Joseph went to check in on his brothers. They were out tending the flocks, just as instructed by his father. His brothers had seen him coming and plotted against him. Verse 19 says, "Here comes the dreamer," they said. "Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let's just sell him to those Ishmaelites, traitors. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." And all the brothers agreed. Verse 31, "Then the brothers killed a young goat and dipped Joseph's robe into the blood. They sent the beautiful robe to their father with this message: 'Look at what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?'" So eventually Joseph was sold to Potiphar. Potiphar was a captain in the palace of the guard for Pharaoh. He gained favor in Potiphar's house. Everything that Joseph did was blessed by God and gained him even more favor in the house. But then Potiphar's wife came along. Potiphar's wife wanted to sleep with Joseph. Joseph was a young, well-built man and was heavily desired by Potiphar's wife. She kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day. He refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. One day, however, no one else was around, and when he went to do his work, she came and grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, "Come on, sleep with me." Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand, and he ran from the house. She was so angry that she lied and said that he had actually tried to come onto her, and that he left his cloak, and that's how she could prove it. Verses 19 through 21. Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. So as Joseph looked after all the prisoners, there came a time when he was able to interpret the dreams of two of those prisoners. Those prisoners would eventually return back to Pharaoh's palace. One was going to be the chief cupbearer, who was very close to Pharaoh. And as he interpreted this dream afterwards, he told him, "Remember me, so that I may have favor with Pharaoh to get out of here." So, just as he had interpreted those dreams, they were released. The one did end up becoming and being right back to the position he was as chief cupbearer to Pharaoh. But he did forget about Joseph, and Joseph remained in prison for multiple years. In Genesis 41, Pharaoh has his dreams. The next morning, Pharaoh was very disturbed by the dreams. So he called all the magicians and all the wise men of Egypt. When Pharaoh told them his dream, not one of them could tell him what they meant. And that same prisoner, the chief cupbearer, remembered that there was a man who was able to interpret dreams. So they brought Joseph to Pharaoh, and he reminded them, chapter 41, verse 16, "It is beyond my power to do this." Joseph replied, "But God can tell you what it means and put your mind at ease." So Joseph let him know that these dreams were as a warning from God that there would be 7 years of prosperity, but following those 7 years of prosperity would be 7 more years of famine. Genesis 41, 37 through 44. Joseph's suggestions were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, "Can we find anyone else like this man, who so obviously is filled with the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has revealed the meaning of these dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent or wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on the throne, will have a rank higher than yours." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him with fine linen clothing and hung a gold chain around his neck. Then he had Joseph ride in a chariot reserved for his second in command. And wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted out, "Kneel down." So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, "I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval." So when the famine came, it spread as far as Canaan, which is actually where Joseph was from and where his family lived. So because that famine spread all the way to Canaan, his family had to travel to Egypt just because, of course, Egypt had Joseph, and Joseph had the master plan on how they were all going to get through this famine. So they were forced to go out to Egypt and actually buy grain and food from their very brother. They had no idea he was alive, but ultimately, yes, they went to Egypt to go and find some food and purchase grain. When his brothers had arrived, Joseph recognized them, but he didn't say anything. But his brothers didn't know it was him. Joseph recognized his brothers immediately, but I'm sure, as you would assume, he didn't quite trust them. He actually accused them of being spies. I'd imagine he had a little distrust, seeing as how he knew what kind of men they were and what they did to him in the past. When he found out that he might have a younger brother that was born after he was sold by his brothers, he sent them away and told them to bring his little brother back. And until they did come back, he would keep one of the other brothers in prison. And this way he would know if they were telling the truth about having a little brother and that they weren't spies there to just scout out to see what it is that they did have. And finally, they did just that. They returned, they brought their brother, and Joseph had one last test for them because he didn't quite know what was gonna happen with these brothers. When his brothers were ready to leave, Joseph gave these instructions to his palace manager. "Fill each of their sacks with as much grain as they can carry, and put each man's money back into his sack. Then put my personal silver cup at the top of the youngest brother's sack, along with the money for his grain." So the manager did as Joseph instructed. Verse 14. Joseph was still in his palace when Judah and his brothers arrived, and they fell to the ground before him. "What have you done?" Joseph demanded. Don't you know that a man like me can predict the future?" Judah answered, "O my Lord, what can we say to you? How can we explain this? How can we prove our innocence? God is punishing us for our sins. My Lord, we have all returned to be your slaves, all of us, not just our brother who had the cup in his sack." "No," Joseph said, "I would never do such a thing. Only the man who stole the cup will be my slave. The rest of you may go back to your father in peace." But they pleaded with him. Verse 31, "If he sees that the boy is not with us, our father will die. We, your servants, will indeed be responsible for sending that grieving white-haired man to his grave. My Lord, I guaranteed to my father that I would take care of the boy. I told him, if I don't bring him back to you, I will bear the blame forever." Genesis 45. Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, "Out, all of you." So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly the Egyptian could hear him, and word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer, and he said again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me into this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years, and there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive, to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of his entire palace, and governor to all of Egypt." So I chose the story of Joseph and the coat of many colors because of how important he was to God and how he continually showed up throughout the journey to get to that dream that he had. So again, Joseph had a dream that only showed him in part of where he was going to end up. It didn't tell him how he was going to get there, because I'm sure if he had that dream, it wouldn't have been very easy. So a few things I want to give to you so that you can take and even read through the story yourself so that you have a better grasp of every specific detail that took place throughout the course of the 20 years of a journey that took him to the end result, that dream coming true. And maybe God gave you a dream, he gave you a vision, or he gave you a talent, an idea, something for you to chase after in the future. You have just a glimpse of what it possibly could be. And I want you to remember these things because this is what Joseph went through, and this is what got him through the journey in order to fulfill that actual dream. Number one is God has placed favor over your life, and he might have shown you at a young age. So whether it was that dream, ambition, or goals that you had, he's given it to you for a reason. Number two is when God gives you a vision or a dream, don't be surprised if the ones closest to you aren't exactly happy about it. And that's what happened with Joseph. He was given this dream, and he may have only been given it to him in part, but his family and the ones that were closest to him were not excited about it. They didn't care what it meant. Number three, it's most important that when you are elevated into a position of power, you never let go of your integrity. When Joseph was in Potiphar's house, he had an opportunity to make some really bad decisions, and he chose not to. And ultimately, God used that as he kept his integrity and still had favor over his life, even when he went to prison. Number four, even after a setback like that, even after a setback or failure in your life, don't be afraid to continue to use your gifts because God will use that to bring you back. Just like he did in prison when he interpreted the dreams of those 2 prisoners. If he hadn't done that, he wouldn't continue to move towards his dream. Number 5, let the Holy Spirit guide you and fuel your wisdom and intellect. So even as Pharaoh said it, once the dreams were interpreted, he said, "Is there no one else in all of Egypt that's as wise as him?" He must have the Spirit of God inside of him. So let the Spirit of God move and fuel your wisdom and intelligence. Number 6, be willing to forgive. Number 6, be willing to forgive. Because just as his brothers came back to him, bowing as he saw in his dream, it wasn't about them worshiping him or submitting to him. It was about them coming back and reconnecting with him. Now Joseph had the power to not forgive, send them back. They would have died in the famine, but instead he welcomed them with open arms. He was able to not only save his entire family, but many more and generations to come because he was willing to forgive what they had done to him. So number 7, God has given you a dream, a vision, or a skill. Maybe it's an idea, a specific relationship, or a connection, some kind of situation in your life that is going to be used to benefit and save the lives of many. Now, we don't like to think or put the pressure on ourselves depending on what it is that we're doing. It almost seems like what I'm doing today isn't impacting or drastically changing the lives of others, but you don't know that because you've only been given the dream in part. What you do today may save the lives of many later. And so today I just want to give you an opportunity that if you haven't said yes to the vision or the calling that God has on your life, it starts by accepting Jesus into your life. And that's what I did when I was 17 years old. It changed my life forever. No regrets, never looking back, and just thanking God for the journey. If there's any way that you want to respond, whether it's to hearing this or even to me personally, please let me know or let the village know. There's many ways that you can respond and let someone know what God is doing in your life. So again, if this word spoke to you in any way, shape, or form, whether it's just an encouragement to say, hey, I'm getting right back onto that vision that God once gave me, and I'm not giving up no matter what happens, please, I want to encourage you, let us know. I want to thank you guys for spending some time with me here in my living room as I was able to bring you this story. It was an honor and a privilege. I thank you again. If you need anything, please contact me or the village. God bless. You guys take care and don't let those dreams get away from you.
Wow, what an amazing time of worship and an amazing message from Pastor Darnell. If God spoke to you in any way, leave a comment or message us. We want to hear your story. This message is available on demand, so share it with someone who you want to encourage. And don't forget, if you want to support all God is doing through the village and worship God with your giving, we have a few different ways for you to do that. You can text any amount to the number listed below or visit our website at www.myvillage.church and click on the Giving tab. Lastly, the village is built on the foundation of prayer. If you have any prayer requests, please email them to amen@myvillage.church so we can stand in the gap with you. Well, church, that's everything from us. We're looking forward to worshiping God online together again next week. Have a great day.